I think my sense of time towards how long a wound takes to heal was a bit off. The next morning, after once again not sleeping a full 8 hours, June dragged me back through the window and into the dojo, then downstairs into the surprise Ripper clinic. The same Ripper checked me over, gave me some meds including some drugs to acclimate to the new limbs, and told me that she wouldn't have to see me again unless something went wrong. That was the good part. It should be another 2 or 3 days before everything feels normal, and probably another 2 weeks after that before you can start really using your arms for more than light work. She informed me as she hypoed me with whatever drugs she wanted me to have. That's way too long. I'll be fine sooner than that, I argued, but June and the Ripper weren't having it. Normally a surgery like this wouldn't take that long to recover from, a few days at most, but you went through 2 surgeries back to back. Trust me, Motoko. You need to take it very easy for a while. Let your shoulders heal unless you want to deal with permanent damage. You are lucky that the Tiger Claws decided to allow you the use of some of our speed heal. If not for June's contribution to the Tiger Claws, it would not have been offered considering how low our stock is. The Ripper informed me as she checked over a medical monitor. Wait. Is that expensive or something? I can pay for it. Actually, I should pay for all of this. How much? I have a chunk of eddies already, and I can go get more. My mind instantly turned to how much loot I would be collecting from the dead maelstrom I would soon be mowing through. Don't worry about it, Emoto. It's all taken care of, June stated, simply trying to end the conversation, but I just ignored him and kept looking at the Ripper. Hard to say, I'm not running a normal clinic here. I'm only here to work with the kamikaze. But speed heal is currently almost impossible to find on the streets. You can guess why. Plus those arms of yours might have come from something your brother collected, but they still belong to the Claws. She looked at me for a moment. It was an expensive procedure. Fill out a statement of how much when you get a chance. I'll take care of it, I told her with a shrug. She was already basically wiping her hands of dealing with me, so I was more than happy to pay eddies not to have Tiger Claw feeling like I owed them hanging over my head. You will not. It has already been taken care of, Motoko. You don't need to worry about anything. June butts in, trying to cut me off. June was doing the overprotective big brother thing, so that was nice. But I was a bratty kid sister, so just make sure you get that to me soon, I told her, completely ignoring June, before slipping off the chair. She was done looking me over, and frankly, I had things I wanted to do, and people I wanted to see. Hey June, you said you were gonna go to the apartment to pick stuff up, right? So can I come with? I decided to change the subject as June was glaring at me with his cold, emotionless eyes. It quickly warmed up as I changed the subject. He hesitated a moment before sighing a bit at my puppy dog eyes. Fine. We will be going incognito anyways. Come on. I borrowed a car. Probably a good idea. I can't exactly drive my car like this, I agreed, and the reminder seemed to make June twitch a bit. Right. A car. How exactly did you afford a car? It's a long story. I was on a job for Wakako. I still don't know how you pulled that off. Wakako isn't exactly our biggest fan. She was nice enough. I mean, old lady rude, but I could deal. She even said I was a valuable agent last time we talked. I argued as June guided me out of the dojo, back through the apartment block. This time I was led into an underground parking garage that was obviously blocked off for Tiger Claw use with a lowered gate. I was settled into an unmarked, heavily tinted arch hella, and June started the engine and we were out in the city. To my surprise, June actually drove like a normal person. Have to pretend we are unimportant. I don't want any maelstrom to track us, he mentioned, after noticing my surprised look. So that's what it takes to get you to drive safely. Interesting, I teased him, earning a scowl as he continued down the road. Before we stop at home, there is a place I need to go. I told him now that we were already on the road and it would be harder to refuse. Need to go to Little China, I told him, earning a very unimpressed look from June. We aren't going on a side trip. What do you even need in Little China? My eyes went cold as I sent him a text for the location. My Ripper. Vic is one of the best in Night City, and I mean that honestly. He's a legend for those in the know, I told him as he looked at me like I was, well, his amnesiac kid sister making grand proclamations. Listen. Just. Please. I know you have your Ripper doc that you brought me to, but I don't. I would feel a lot more comfortable with a checkup from Vic. Please, June? I begged. He was definitely glaring, and I could see his chromed hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. Fine. But first you have to tell me why you even went to a Ripper, or how you know this guy. Oh. You didn't notice? My eyes, June. I got a set of Kiroshis. Vic managed to find them for me. Ow. I muttered as I barely stopped myself from bonking my head on the dash. Really glad I had my seatbelt on. June had hit the brakes. Hard. What? When? How? Kiroshi aren't cheap. I don't even have a set of Kiroshi. All of which is basically the same answer, June. I told you. I've been doing gigs for Wakako. And some side biz. It's your fault, you know. I wanted to tell you all about the adventures I've been having, but you wouldn't even answer your phone. I couldn't. I was on the job. You can be tracked through calls by a skilled netrunner. I was trying to protect you. His voice rose up into a shout at the end. Now I find out you were doing jobs for Wakako. That you met some creepy back alley Ripper? That you chipped new chrome and I didn't even know? He was roaring, his fist rocked out and smashed into the dash. Electronics and buttons pinged around for a moment. I wasn't really surprised. I mean, it wasn't the first time that June had expressed his anger by punching something. We really should work on that. It was a bad way to release stress. But it was what he said that made me sad, or maybe what he was saying. I was safe. Hiromi was with me when Vic chipped me. She was super sus too. But Vic's good people. Like an honestly good person. So I was fine. And yeah, Wakako is surprisingly nice to me. I mean, she is really to the point. We don't chit-chat. And she may have sent me on some really boring gopher missions. I should tell you about the wedding ring fiasco. Anyway. I'm okay, June, honest. And I'll be okay moving forward. What happened yesterday wasn't your fault. He slowly pulled his fist out of the dash. His fist clenching and unclenching. I realized then. June, for all of his attempts to be cool, was struggling with all his new chrome just like I was. I reached out without a word. Even if it was still floppy, I put my hand in his clenching fist. I held his hand the rest of the way, slowly feeling the tension in his fingers die down. Which was super weird, by the way, because I was still getting a really bad phantom limb sensation, so I barely even felt like we were holding hands at times. But I kept cool. I was trying to comfort my stupid brother after all. Finally, after a few minutes of driving through night city traffic, June spoke. I'm sorry I wasn't there, Motoko. I'll be there from now on. I promise. Don't worry. And just give me some space. Showing up to a gig with my big brother peering over my shoulder would be embarrassing. Almost as embarrassing as the time I had to take the bus to a job and the people I was trying to collect from literally watched me get off the bus. I thought I was gonna die. PFFT. A noise escaped June and I pouted at him as his little burst of amusement turned into a chuckle as he processed what I had just told him. They really saw you get off the bus? Yep. They were at the gas station right there. I had to do a long walk over to them too. Ha ha ha. June's laughter was nice. It had been a while since I heard him laugh as he took endless joy at my suffering. At least you've been safe. Until yesterday. Yeah, I only got shot like once. Well, more than that, but I had successfully covered up the bullet wounds every other time. Because I was a genius and master of disguise. That was about when June once again slammed on the brakes. You what? Dash. June pulling the car in front of Misty's Esoterica was a relief. He had been seething for the last few minutes. It was just a flesh wound, I mumbled. Quietly. Very quietly. Because the last time I had said that June almost smashed the car into a pole because he was yelling at me. June might have already parked, but I didn't trust him not to start throttling me if I tried to say it again. Apparently the reveal that I had been shot on a job was not doing good things to June's blood pressure. I was gonna ask Vic to check over June now too. Because his face going so red probably wasn't healthy. Oh my. Motoko? A voice called out and I turned to see Misty having come out of her shop after seeing me. Hey Misty. How's the biz? I asked, but that was ignored as she rushed up to me. Your arms. Vic didn't tell me you were getting that much work done. Is everything connected well? No problems? Well, it wasn't Vic. I got klepped by some maelstrom. They were pretty pissed, so they decided to cut me up a bit. I'm here for a checkup from Vic. I trust him to make sure everything is good. Oh.
Oh.
Motoko. I'm sorry, Misty gasped as she looked from my arms still held in their slings then up to my face. Are you gonna be okay? Do you want to talk? I have some really nice soothing ambience shards that really help in meditation, and I'm alright. I interrupted her. I just want to get Vic to check me over. I don't know the Ripper that ended up fixing me up. Oh, by the way, this is my brother June, I say, shifting sideways since I couldn't really point very well. Misty sort of blinked in that foggy way she tended towards as she looked June over. The fact he was wearing a big heavy shirt to cover most of his tattoos, yet still looked like a Yakuza on vacation, probably ran through Misty's head. Nice to meet you. She seemed to settle on, and June just gave a disinterested nod. He was grumpy at me still. Is Vic in? Of course, come on, I'll walk you down. This is so serious. I can't believe that the maelstrom grabbed you. I mean, I've heard they do that sometimes, but that is. She trailed off again with a sad little sigh. Yeah, it was pretty rough. I wish I had been a little less surprised. I would have been able to fight back a lot better, but I wasn't exactly prepared. Which I guess is my fault. Always be prepared, right? I'll remember it for the future. I told her with confidence. It didn't seem to help as she was nibbling at her fingernail nervously. But we all walked through her shop and down into Vic's clinic. June was looking around, obviously unhappy with the aesthetics. Hiromi and June were both so alike sometimes. No reason to be so skeptical. Just because Vic's clinic was underground, in an alley, in a storage unit and not a building. No reason to be so sketched out. Vic was amazing. I led us down as Misty followed behind along with June, who was looking all over the place. Hey Vic. I called out, sounding a little chipper. I felt way more comfortable here than I had in the Tiger Claw Ripper's chair. Seriously, the lady felt like a back alley Yakuza doc. Which I guess she kinda was. Oh? Is that Motoko? What's going on, kid? What the hell? He stopped as he looked me over and noticed that both of my arms were in a sling. Hey Vic. Lot of stuff happened. I kinda need a checkup. I offered, looking down at my arms. Damn kid, that's a hell of a job to have done. No, that ain't right. What happened? He asked, his voice changing from surprise to anger as he actually got off his rolly chair and stalked over. June seemed to step closer, but I just moved away from him so Vic could see. His hand pulled up the shoulder of the generic t-shirt June had given me to wear as his eyes narrowed. This was a hack job. What absolute piece of shit did this work on you? Well, first was a spider ripper with maelstrom. He cut my arms off and decided to add some sketch chrome. It was set up to drive me psycho. June, my brother, say hi June, rescued me and took me to his Tiger Claw Ripper. She got the arms off and chipped in these condors so at least I would have limbs. I'm just wanting a checkup from someone I trust. Make sure everything was handled right. Vic was real quiet for a moment, as I watched his jaw clench. I realized he wasn't looking anymore, but instead was staring off into the distance. Oh, Vic was real angry. Vic? I prompted, forcing him to come back. Yeah. Sorry. Come on kid. Take a seat, let's check everything. I'll make sure everything is squared away. Don't worry, Vic said, going full dad energy as he helped me get settled onto the chair and started dragging equipment over. June was still hovering, but Vic's obvious skill was shining through even to me. So June, who had been under the knife of more rippers than I had, must have noticed as he slowly started letting the tension drain out of him. Vic was in full doctor mode. It was funny, Vic was usually a jovial guy, quick to make dad jokes at the drop of a hat. But he was also an amazing ripper. No, an amazing doctor. And right now he seemed to be anger doctoring? Hate doctoring? He was still kinda scowling, but his hands were absolutely dancing over his tools as he scanned my shoulders and the chrome all at the same time. Vic was possessed. It was Nova. Finally Vic, with a quiet mutter to himself, rose up and grabbed a few things from a few different containers around his office, before rolling back over. Gonna port in here. The Ripper did a half-decent job, but I can see a few quick fixes that, well, they work, but they can be done better. Take a seat, son, you're gonna be here for an hour or so. Misty, can you get some water for everyone? Vic called out as first looked to June and then Misty as he tapped a few things on the shoulder of my new arm, and a port opened, where he plugged in a scanning tool of some kind, and then, with the work of a man that had done this a million times, he poked and prodded, and inside Need to find out what she gave you before I can give you any anesthesia. Don't trust some docs' doses. They either undercut, or give too much to seem like a safer doc. Quick blood test, and we will get started. Some of the nerve connectors are doubled up. It's faster, and doesn't really cause big issues, but it does mean the nerves not connected will either die off, losing some sense of touch, or you start getting pains as they start sending signals that something is wrong. Thanks, Vic. I told him with a smile and a sigh of relief. Even June seemed impressed at Vic's skill as he balanced multiple different scans with the effortlessness of a man that was truly in his element. An hour later Vic had calmed down enough he was cracking bad jokes, making even June have a smirk on his face as Vic finally pulled away from my other shoulder. I've done everything I can to make sure the interface is stable, and all the connections are done correctly. It'll be a few days before you start feeling normal again. The injury and multiple surgeries takes time to heal. But it should heal fine from here. He added, wiping his head a bit as he reached out and took a drink to quench his thirst. Great. Thanks, Vic. I really appreciate you checking me over. Can you do June as well? What? Motoko. I don't need a checkup. June interrupted instantly once he understood what I said. But I ignored his stupid statement. All of his chrome is new. I'm worried they might not have put everything together right. Motoko, stop ignoring me. June growled. So I ignored him. Vic watched the byplay with a bit of amusement. I wouldn't mind, but maybe another time. I'm gonna need at least a few to stretch my legs, he joked with a smile, and I blinked. Oh. Right. Sorry, I didn't mean to overwork you. Nothing to worry about. How about it, June? Want a checkup? I'm fine, but your Ripper didn't do all of my connections right. Vic fixed them, right? I asked, turning to the man who nodded slowly. So maybe she skipped some steps with you too. For me, June, please get a checkup. Vic is amazing. He can make sure all of your chrome isn't causing you any issues. You've been irritable since you started getting chrome. Irritability? Is that something new? Vic asked, cutting in, looking concerned. He turned to June. Have you been noticing any unusual emotional control problems? Irritability, shortness of temper? No. I am in perfect control, June snapped. Losing control? He quirked an eyebrow, turning to me. It's not that unusual. June has always been a hothead. It's the coldness that is more concerning. I offered, and June was definitely unhappy about being talked about as he stepped closer and slapped a hand over my mouth. A hand that I really couldn't do much about. Vic had numbed my shoulders and arms while he worked. MWH Fway. I called out, telling him this wasn't fair, as June suddenly returned back to that look. The big brother taking pleasure in siblings' torture look. I am fine, he said, turning to Vic. But I might seek out a checkup at some point. Your skill was impressive. Sooner is better than later, son. Really. The one thing you don't want is to leave a problem to fester. With cyberware that never, and I mean never, ends well. Vic repeated himself before smiling at my plight. He was in on it. Traitor. I am curious though. I have been absent from Motoko's life. But how did she meet you? It must be a recent relationship. June asked, now that I could say anything. Oh, it was an interesting day, all right. She. MGH Fanto. I tried to tell Vic to shut his mouth because June was gonna freak out. I would have been cutting a hand across my throat as well if I could move my arms. Unfortunately I could not. And Vic had no mercy. Came in with boxes of cyberware. Tons of stuff. She offered it to me so I could do something good with it. Boxes of cyberware? June asked, blinking. Where did she get that much cyberware? Where did you get that much cyberware? He asked, head tilting down towards me. My attempts to keep Vic from speaking failed. Scavrade from what she said. You didn't know? Scav? Motoko. What have you done? June roared, his flamey eyes really making him look like a demon as he glared down at me. Is that why they called him the Oni? I guess that answers that question. The drive from Vic's was very quiet. June had not taken the story about the Scavrade well. And I mean really not well. He had exploded at first, stalking back and forth as I explained what I had done. Then he had gone quiet. Eventually just ordered me to the car when he was done. Vic had been a little apologetic, but I just gave him a smile telling him it was no big. June got angry, and was overprotective. Nothing to be upset about. It would have come out eventually. Exactly what jobs did you do for Wakako? The one you got shot. What happened? He finally said as we were halfway to home. To the apartment to pick up stuff I would need for a while. So I started telling him about the job. About Scorpion, the gig. That I had brought an HMG with me. Which had earned me a startled look from June and me yelling at him to watch the road as we almost crashed. I told him how the gig had gone, the chase, firing the HMG out the side of the car. The car crash. That I had been shot trying to rescue Scorpion. How I hadn't let the gig end there. That I had chased after him through the desert, finding the Raffine's location. How I had gone in and murdered each and every one of them. Unlike with Hiromi, unlike with everyone, I went into the whole thing. Every detail I explained the best I could. The kills, and how I had done it. By the end of my story we were at the apartment. June pulled into the parking garage and stopped because my car was in his spot. Do you like it, my Quadra? I asked a little nervously. He hadn't said anything since I had finished my story. He pulled into the spot next to it, and stepped out without a word. Which was annoying because getting the door was awkward. Eventually I got it, and slipped out. June was just standing there looking into the darkness of the garage. June? I didn't want you to put yourself at risk, Motoko, he said quietly, practically whispering to the quiet stillness of the underground garage. You were supposed to be home safe. Taken care of. Little gigs with your friends that weren't supposed to be dangerous. You weren't supposed to have to kill. I messed that up before I even left, but this is. It's not right. He turned towards me. Why can't you just be safe? Why are you throwing yourself into this life? I don't want this for you. Not you. Not my little Motoko who always rushes into things. That wanted to be a tiger claw more than I ever did. Who shouldn't have ever been caught by scavs, and shouldn't have ever had to stain her hands. He was ranting. And not quite but almost crying. Damn. I hadn't wanted to shock June this much. I already expected he was in a sensitive state. Okay, Motoko. Time to calm June down. Before he could say anything else I pushed into his space and forced him to hug me. My arms were still floppy, but I could move them enough for him to get the idea. You didn't fail, June. You didn't mess up. You didn't do anything wrong. You saved me. Took care of me. You made me happy even when I was scared about everything around me. Not knowing anything, I was really scared, but you made that fear go away. I spoke loud enough to be heard despite pushing my face into his chest. His arms slowly wrapped around my shoulders. His hands were shaking. You didn't fail. I was never going to be safe, June. I was never going to stay at home and hide away. The best way to keep me safe was for me to learn how to fight. The only way to learn is to do. I told him as I felt his arms continued to shake. You aren't responsible for what happened. You didn't ask for it to happen, and you tried to prevent it. You can't blame yourself for other people's actions. You also can't protect me from the world. Not even if you were. Not even if our last name was Arasaka would I be safe. So I've been learning to make myself safe. You shouldn't have to. You should be safe. He finally spoke, repeating himself blindly. I shook my head, making sure he could feel the motion. The only way I'll be safe, June, is to become able to protect myself. Which is exactly what I'm gonna do. I wasn't paying attention and let the Strom get the jump on me. That won't happen next time. I'll be prepared, and if anyone ever tries to jump me again, I'll make them regret ever trying. I'll make them die. I tell him confidently. That burning sensation in my chest. That disgust and horror at what they had done to me was locked up tight. But not gone. Never gone. That night had been an offense against me I would never forgive. Scavs. Raffen. Maelstrom. All of them were at the same level. Maelstrom I had tried to give the benefit of the doubt in some ways. Sure, they did horrible things. I knew about their AI rituals. I knew that they tried to force chrome on people like the monk. I knew they were scum, but I had mentally put them into another category from scum that needs to die. I had placed them above that, because I didn't hate their desire to gain more chrome. I mean, I liked the Mechanicus in some ways too. I can understand their motivation. But my face had been firmly rubbed in the fact they were no better than the scavs. So I would treat them that way. I would hunt them. Unlike June and his little band of Borgs, I wasn't limited. I was a gamer. A super weapon the likes of which the world had never seen. I stepped away from June then. His hands had finally stopped shaking so much, although he was still obviously lost in thoughts just like I had been. Now if only my hands would stop clenching so hard. I was struggling to get them to relax. They were both clenched into fists. "Come on, June, let's go get some stuff, okay?" He blinked a bit as if remembering where he was before he nodded quietly. June's protective arm over my shoulder was nice as we crossed the street. The bloodstains were still there. I did my best to ignore them. Maelstrom would pay for every drop of blood they took from me. With June's help we gathered up a bunch of stuff from the apartment. I really wasn't able to help much as even a backpack would go over my still injured shoulders. Still he gathered up a bunch of things including some of my repair work and tools, and we left the apartment. It was kinda sad. I knew we would come back, eventually, but it was still sad to be sort of moving away from home. It was where I felt safe. June didn't talk much on the way back to the dojo apartments, only speaking up about getting some food, which we stopped at on the way. To my absolute shock, June didn't order a double XL burrito. Has June gone completely cyber psycho? Now I was actually worried, but he seemed normal as we ate on the drive back. Truly, watching June eat something other than double XL burritos was too weird for this world. We drove around instead of going straight to the apartment, through a few heavy tiger claw zones as I could see them literally walking the street. "Anyone following us will be spotted and removed," June explained at my curious look as we finally made it down to the dojo. After hauling my stuff inside the apartment, June left to do some tiger claw stuff. His words. I settled in for a sleep. It was time to do a full heal, see how well I would handle having new arms, and start preparing for my revenge. I blinked awake. As always, using the menu to sleep for 8 hours left me feeling 100% rested and wide awake. I sat up looking around. I had purposefully fallen asleep on the couch so that June could keep his bed so I didn't see him as I looked around. Checking the clock, I noticed it was only 9 p.m. Late, but not too late. June was probably still up even. With that, I looked down to my arms and tried to move them. That sluggish feeling was gone. But it still wasn't right. Wasn't normal. I lifted my right arm and felt off. The feeling of a phantom limb struck me heavily. As I lifted my arm, it felt like it was a second too slow, leaving my brain telling me my arm should be there, but it hadn't made it. I tested the same with my left arm, finding the noodly arm effect was gone, but the foreignness was still present. I stood up, shaking myself loose from my slings that I had fallen asleep with. I felt my breath come out shaky, a tightness behind my eyes. It was scary. What I had gone through, what they had done to me, and now the effects of which I was still dealing with. I was scared. I exhaled ice. The coldness creeping up my veins, freezing my anxiety. My fears. I could deal with this. Hundreds of thousands of people live in Night City with chrome arms. It wasn't weird. Or impossible. Just a short time to get used to it and I would be fine. It was just a change. Just one more change. Just like all the changes I had made since I woke up in the hospital. Just one more tiny alteration in my life. I let the ice melt. Let my feelings slowly slip back into my thoughts. I was scared. But not because I hated the cyborg arms. But because it hadn't been my choice. I had wanted this, but at my pace. I exhaled warmth. No tears threatened to come out. Okay, Motoko. Step 1. Get used to the limbs. Closing my eyes, I stretched my arms out, then opened them, looking at them for the first time as mine. They weren't Militech condors. They weren't chrome. They were my arms. My fingers were thin. The Ripper must have adjusted my arms to suit a woman. I spread my arms sideways, getting a feel for my wingspan. It was about the same? Not an easy thing to tell, but it was there. My fingers were longer now. I realized I could clench my fists and my fingers didn't rest at the same place they would have before. I played with my fingers for a moment, pressing each finger to my thumb one after another, wiggled the digits, and even threw up a middle finger. Just to make sure for next time. Then I moved to my palms. They weren't flesh. Instead a smooth stainless steel, or aluminum, but covered at parts with a rubberized grip. I could feel it. The sensors of the cyberware gave me an almost accurate sense of touch. The foreignness was still there, and I had to close my eyes and just breathe as I felt new sensations for old actions. Touching my own palm shouldn't cause me this much discomfort. Shouldn't feel so wrong. But I exhaled. Let myself simply adjust. Let the feeling of it flow through me. This was what my hand felt like. I pushed my hands together, letting the feeling flow through my mind. This was me. I let my palms drift apart. Now I focused on my wrists, feeling their range of motion. Every angle I would ever need as I slowly shifted my wrist this way and that. My wrist was strong. My wrists before had been kinda weak. Not helped by the feeling of them breaking whenever I shot my boya. But I could feel how much stronger they were. The tension of pushing them to their limit, actually a nice feeling. Yes, it was strange, but it didn't hurt, like when you stretched with meat, a nice feeling. I moved on. My forearms were coated smooth steel. Small gaps in the exterior showed the muscle underneath. I could see the synth muscle contract and shift as I moved my wrists. I let myself grow used to the sight and feeling. My elbow was weird. The range of motion was a lot wider. Able to go a bit beyond an elbow's normal range of motion on the extension. I repeated the motion for a while, simply growing used to the differences. My biceps were defined. The military nature of the limb was in full view, but it didn't bother me. I had muscles before from all the body training. There wasn't much to think about. It's not like you really think about your bicep very often. The length was about right. And I could feel the muscles contracting as I curled my hands to my shoulders. My shoulders were different. Obviously. They had a texture to them. My shoulders had an almost armored section. It wasn't large, but it made my shoulder feel larger in my peripheral vision that was so clear with my Kiroshi. I could feel the metal cool against my skin that ran from my shoulder to above my breast. The length of how far the arms had extended into my chest? Or just how the arms connected to my nerves? No idea. I exhaled, letting the feeling pass. These were my arms. I opened my stat menu. Level 5. 4,756 thousandths. Body 610 due to cyberization, maximum value has increased by 4. Athletics 5. Street Brawler 5. Annihilation 4. Reflex 6. Blade 6. Handguns 4. Assault 3. Driving 4. Intelligence 4. Breach Protocol 3. Quick Hacks 3. Cool 8. Ninjutsu 7. Cold Blood 6. Technical Attribute 37 due to cyberization, maximum value has increased by 4. Crafting 3. 0 stat point. 0 skill point. Perks. Ambidextrous Blades 2. Quick Draw Handguns 2. Gun Nut Assault 2. Parkour Athletics 2. Grappling Street Brawler 2. Drive-by Driver 2. Cat-like Athletics 5. Cool Nerves Cold Blood 2. Danger Sense Ninjutsu 2. Wall Breaking Breach Protocol 2. Cybersecurity Quick Hack 2. Recoil Reduction. Annihilation 2. Cyber Ninja Ninjutsu 5. Fearless Chill. Cold Blood 5. Improvised Weapons Street Brawler 5. Parry Blades 5. Robotics Wizard Crafting 2. Cyberware. Militech Paralin Adaptation Militech Paralin 00. Kiroshi MK1 Adaptation Kiroshi MK102. Militech Condor Adaptation Militech Condor 010. The numbers soothed me. There weren't any negatives, or loss of stats. It means I was okay. That I could grind out a bit and be back to where I was. No, be even better. I liked that. The chrome hadn't been my choice, but I had always meant to do it. To be better. I clenched my fist and felt the pressure within the grip. I blinked my eyes and sighed. I guess I could understand why chipping in chrome would drive you nuts. My eyes still felt weird when blinking, to the extent that not blinking felt more comfortable, but my body still wanted to blink. It was a struggle to keep from doing it. Now I also had my arms feeling off. Every part of them worked. I could feel everything. The sensors were actually really advanced, but it wasn't the same. And that feeling of offness was distracting. Irritating. Like if your arm fell asleep and you tried using it to do a normal task. You could, but the lack of normal sensation left you uncomfortable. Yeah. That was what it was like. I decided, fine. I just have to get used to it. I affirmed to myself once more, extending my arms and running through a test of my fingers. Time to grind. I muttered as I fell back on my street brawler knowledge. The knowledge of how to train to fight. I threw a punch. It whipped out. It wasn't right. The phantom limb was still there, making the punch feel slow. Off. I pulled back and threw it again. And again. And again. I would grow used to it mentally even if I can't physically. Adaptation was probably going to be a very important stat for me right now. My hopes were pinning on the stat making everything go back to feeling normal. That meant I had only one choice. Kill. Good thing I already had plenty of acceptable targets. What are you doing? June's voice suddenly interrupted me as I punched, making me stop. I looked over. He had just entered the apartment, and was looking at me in concern. Punching? Sit down. You are still healing. Are you an idiot? Of course you are. He muttered as he practically picked me up and sat me on a couch. A moment later he came back with a bag full of my tech stuff I had asked him to bring from the apartment. Light duty only. What part of that didn't make it through your gonk head? He cursed at me, actually sounding pretty pissed as he slammed the bag on the table. I winced. That wasn't good for my tools, June. But I was wise. I kept my mouth shut and nodded along as June stalked around the apartment. I would just wait for him to leave. Until then I pulled out some of my tools and had a very strange session making some pieces that I was gonna use to modify my Unity. The old gun had been with me for a while. It was about time I spent a little time working on it. It was almost an hour later when I finished the new trigger that would be a bit smoother than the old one, holding the part up to the light admiring its look when I realized my Unity was gone. I put the trigger down and had to wipe my eyes. I was so bored. June was still mother henning me. So I wasn't able to do any real exercise or grinding when he was around, and he had patently refused to let me go anywhere. So I had been stuck inside playing with the few pieces of tech I had. I had already breached the security on every device in the apartment, and many of them in the building itself. Bored. June though was a good big brother. He must have a brother sense because as I was slowly losing my mind he pulled me out of the apartment and brought me over to the dojo. I was feeling relieved and happy, I might get some exercise done, until he walked me over to an older man that had on a gi and a lot of tiger claw tattoos. But that was more the norm than not here. Sensei. This is Motoko. June suddenly introduced me. Humph. Was the only noise he made as he looked me over. I am Ozeki Sensei. Those arms of yours are new, he said, and it took me a moment to realize he was asking a question with how gravely his voice was. Yes. Then you will be helpless as a babe until you learn them, he said simply as he turned and grabbed a shinai off a rack and then threw it at me. It wasn't a gentle throw. I managed to keep from yelping as I jerked, my arms raising to catch them, but the timing was off. My hand wasn't where I needed it to be and the sword ended up getting caught on my fingers and nearly smacking me in the face. But I managed to seal both hands around the sword, wincing as it creaked a bit, but it was fine. Sensei. Light duty only. June hinted loudly, looking a little irritated, but Ozeki-sensei just turned towards me. Kusanagi. You have a task to complete. He dismissed June with a single sentence, and even June realized it as he frowned but gave a small bow before turning and walking away. Wait, June, I was feeling very unsafe. Protect me. Now. Show me your stance. He barked, his voice so growly that I instantly did as I was told. Feeling myself falling into a neutral stance, shinai held out before me. Now strike, he demanded, and I swung. He didn't like that. He ran me through the ringer. I was supposed to be on light duty. Even if I was actually fine now. This was unfair. I had gained a few blade alerts by the time I was released and allowed to run away back to the apartment. It wasn't like I was that tired or anything. It wasn't that what he had me do was unlike what I normally do when I grind. He was just intimidating. He growled and glared constantly. I work best with positive reinforcement, you know. Still, it was done. I escaped and went home, tinkered with my spare parts until June came back. I'll be gone tonight. And most of tomorrow. Don't leave the apartments. You can go to the dojo, or speak to the secretary in the break room if you need something. He ordered before I could even greet him as he rushed into his room and then came out carrying his weapons. I realized he was going out to kill Maelstrom. Instantly I felt the itch to follow him. I could help. A lot. I could make sure June would be safe. But June would never accept that. Not after what had just happened. I would need to recover enough that I could push past his initial refusals. I would need to grind. June, be safe, I demanded as he almost walked out the door, but I stopped him with a behind hug. I will. Emoto. He answered softly, his voice breaking from that cold icy tone he kept falling back into. But he couldn't stay. He broke off and headed out of the apartment right after. Once he was gone I turned around. I picked up the table in front of the couch and moved it out of the way so I had at least 12 hours or more before June came back. Time to work through everything I knew until my arms could do what I expected them to. I dropped down and started doing push-ups. Then I pushed myself to my feet, throwing punches into the air. I grabbed a pistol that June had left behind for me. He had noticed that I didn't have my Unity anymore. A Lexington. It felt close enough to my old Unity, if not quite the same, and after grabbing my old holster and fitting it in, I went back to it. Push-ups, jumping jacks, punches, quick drawing. Everything I knew I would need. I even started juggling the magazine of the Lexington between my hands to make sure I could catch things. And quickly reload the gun. That foreign feeling never left. The phantom limbs never lined up right. But that was fine. I could live with it. As long as my arms did what I needed. As long as I could shoot, and punch and stab. As long as I could kill. The next morning I went back to the dojo. The sensei wasn't alone. Another Borg was there going through some tai chi if the knowledge from street brawling was reliable. The fact she was seeming to hesitate a bit on some of the motions. Yeah. She had been injured. New chrome. She was going through something similar to me. But unlike me she was a Borg. She had the weird leg blades that some of the tiger claw-gorged out women had and was doing her best to remain stable as she went through the movements. I watched for a while as Sensei led her through the kata. Who's the kid? The woman finally asked, her voice sounding completely electronic. Focus. Sensei barked, not answering until the woman was back in form. Motoko is Jun Kusunagi's sister. He finally offered only once the woman had proven she was focused again. The kid's sister, huh? She muttered, looking over to me before Sensei made a noise of displeasure and she refocused. I continued watching until Sensei spoke up. Motoko. Join us, he demanded. It wasn't a request. I sighed internally, but rose up and slipped into the kata without issue. Street brawling hadn't given me the direct knowledge on how to do it, but I could easily follow a new kata. Especially one as slow and relatively simple as Tai Chi. I followed along, finding the rhythm without any issue. It wasn't any more mindless than grinding with the punching machine, so I quickly fell into the zone of just following Sensei's moves. 100 Street Brawler XP gained. I blinked and felt a smile coming to my lips as the alert popped in. Motoko, was it? Those arms of yours are new. The woman said suddenly as we both followed the motions. Yeah. Strom decided it would be fun to cut my arms off and put on a set of cyber arms wrong. So I got a new set now. Trying to get used to them. It's your hip, right? I pointed out. The woman had been favoring her left leg and the way she moved it was like her balance was off. Good eye. She offered after a moment. I took a round that punched through. Blew off my leg. Managed to pull myself out of the action. Got a refit and here I am. Getting used to the changes. Sensei is the best at getting us back up and running again. There is a reason we are camping out in his dojo. Humph. He grunted, eyeing us both as very specifically did a motion we hadn't copied right. Both of us jumped back to it, but it seemed he was displeased. Aghari. Motoko. You will spar, he demanded instantly, and I looked at the woman. Aghari, I suppose, to wonder what he meant, but she was smirking a bit at me. Sorry kid. I'll go easy on you. But what Sensei says goes, she said as her hands formed into fists. Suddenly a shinai was thrown at me. I only caught the motion due to my kiroshi. I nearly fumbled as he had chucked it quite hard at me. I managed to get the grip and turn it into a flourish as I faced the woman. Ho? Not bad kid. Try to keep up. Aghari offered before she moved. Even with my kiroshi I was barely able to react fast enough to fist arcing towards me. I wasn't fast enough. The fist stopped as it tapped my nose. Never fought someone with a sandy before, have ya? She asked with an utterly arrogant smile. Gotta move quick, kid, otherwise you get flatlined. Fool, Sensei said as he whacked the back of Akari's head. The older woman yelped and turned with a thunderous glare before seemingly calming after a moment. What good is a spar if you use such tricks? Back to your place. Yes, Sensei. Akari offered, but there was a hint of angry rebellion in her voice. It's okay. She's right. I never faced Sandevistan. It's good to see what it can do. I offered, trying to lower the tension that had suddenly appeared. Spar. Begin. Sensei offered without any further words, and I refocused on Akari, who didn't seem to have any hesitation on her mind. She rushed me, her fists clenched, but this time it was at a more normal speed. I soon learned the Shinai wasn't going to stop her. Her cyber arms were more than capable of blocking the Shinai without a care and sending a fist rushing for my stomach. Since she wasn't moving at sandy-level speeds, I managed to jump away, but then she was on me. Punches thrown at me in a barrage, fast and strong. Her arms weren't gorilla arms, but that hardly matters at a certain point. It was still a metal-clad fist rushing me. And so we sparred. She was better than me. Faster than me. Stronger than me. It didn't take long until I was taking blows that left nasty bruises on my chest. My arms the only part of me strong enough to stop her fists from crashing into me. Even my parry perk was simply knocked aside. The Shinai simply couldn't last against her hits whenever I used it to try and parry her fists away, the faux bamboo creaking at the stress each time as I was forced to give up on the parry. Finally I managed to get into a position that my thrust with the Shinai wasn't something she could ignore. The thrust would have slammed into her throat. And then suddenly she wasn't there. I blinked. Actually blinked because it took me that moment to realize what she had done. Did you just do a backflip? Course. My arms are more than strong enough to catch me. And my legs are way stronger. I've cut down Strom completely on my hands before. Akari offered as she looked up towards me. Her body in a sort of scorpion pose with her arms holding her up. Her legs pointed towards me like she was going to strike and stab me. Well, I could do that. Athletics, parkour, and even cat-like gave me a solid understanding on how to move. I rushed her this time. Her legs flicked out, the pointed cyber were more than strong enough to knock me senseless. I spun, letting the blow pass me as I crouched down, swiping at her left arm to force her to lift it to block. Then I leapt, rolling sideways over her, striking leg flipping in the air as I landed on her other side. The Shinai swiping out while it wasn't strong enough to truly hurt her. It was more than strong enough to jerk her arm back as I slammed it into the inside of her elbow. She fell, her other arm still returning down to regain stability as she took a tumble. Instantly she rolled with the motion, her cyber were the only thing keeping her from a neck injury as she rolled back to her feet and attacked me. I backflipped, landing on my new arms with only a slight bit of wobble to avoid her leg slashing through where I had just been. This was fun. I got back to my feet just in time to block a few kicks and punches with my Shinai. Akari though wasn't happy. She looked kinda pissed. Akari. Sensei suddenly barked out as I dodged another strike from the woman's feet, but she wasn't listening. Oh, I guess this was suddenly not a spar. She moved. Fast. A blur of colors as she approached and struck. I had only barely got my arms crossed to block the punch that sent me tumbling. I let myself roll a few times even with my breath taken from me before I extended my legs, catching the mat floors to break my momentum. I used my arms to make sure I wasn't smashing my face into the ground. When I stopped I was already staring at her, ready to leap back up from my split leg position, my hands gripping the mat ready to launch me into the air if need be. Akari. Sensei was pissed, but the woman just stood there, seeming to take a minute to calm herself. Well kid, how are the arms? Still have the phantom limbs? She asked, and in that moment. No. The speed of the attacks and the focus on fighting had blurred the sensation. I was breathing heavily as I caught my breath, so I couldn't say much. That was okay, Sensei had enough words for me. Akari. Meditation. You obviously lack control over your spirit. Go. He barked at the end, and even the gorged-out woman jumped a little at his words. Yes, Sensei. Keep it up, kid. You might just be worth keeping around. You wouldn't say that if I was coming from out of sight. I grumbled quietly, as I finally pushed myself back to my feet. Rubbing my chest, I grumbled a little. Supposed to be on light duty. That is unnecessary. You have already healed plenty. Sensei suddenly said from beside me, startling me at his sudden appearance. How'd you know? I deal with many men and women that need physical adjustment to their chrome. I know what an injury looks like. Your chest? It took me a moment to realize he was asking after my injury. I shrugged, but he didn't look satisfied, so I did a few stretches and breathed deeply, and while it was sore and painful, I was fine. It's fine. Good. Akari is usually more in control. It will not happen again, he said with a growl. It was fine. She isn't the first Borg I fought. I shrugged. Honestly, it was good practice. A reminder that despite my benefits I could still be overpowered. He looked me over before nodding. Come. You could use meditation as well. Akari will walk you through it. He called out, and I could hear the woman grumble from the sidelines where she had moved away and sat cross-legged. Come on, kid. Time to bring yourself into alignment, as Sensei likes to say. I shrugged. As I settled in. To my surprise, Akari wasn't a bad teacher, and I realized long after I settled in cross-legged with my hands formed into different poses to let myself align, that this entire thing was a course for potential cyberpsychos. June was with them, and Akari was a member of Kamikaze as well. They were all here under Sensei's watchful eye, kept healthy and stable as the tiger claws could get them. Huh? I was kinda surprised. You don't expect a gang to care that much, but I guess when you put in thousands of eddies worth of equipment into them, keeping them from completely losing it was in your best interest.